Welcome back, everybody, to the Capital Conversations podcast. I'm your host, AJ Smith, and today on Capital Conversations, I'm joined by William Parmer. He is an investor, he's a mentor, he's a coach with Master Passive Income. William's journey into real estate began after serving as a U.S. Marine and working as a law enforcement officer. And when the pandemic shook up his career, he pivoted to real estate, quickly building a portfolio of rental properties, a mobile home park, and Airbnb short-term rentals, all designed to generate passive income. Today, he's a coach, he's a podcast host, he's an expert in financial independence. He's helping others replace their income through smart investing strategies. And we'll be diving into how he scaled his portfolio, how he turned around a distressed mobile home park, how he raised private capital, leveraged tech to optimize his investments. So whether you're looking to diversify your assets, refine your cash flow strategy, or raise capital like a pro, William has some serious insights to share. Without further ado, William, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh man, I'm super excited to be here, AJ. And awesome intro. Awesome. I hope to live up to the hype. So
you will. I have full confidence. Well, let's just dive into it. Walk us through, what was your mindset? You were working as a Marine, serving the country, and somehow you came across this real estate thing. What happened?
Wow, yeah, it's kind of a long story in the making, which it is, I think, for most people. So back in the day, back before my service in the military, my dad bought rental properties, and he didn't keep any of them, and I didn't really understand why. He kept them for a year to 2 years, and ended up selling them. Now he regrets that decision. And fast forward probably about 10 years or so. I had 7 years in the Marines and got out a little bit early, law enforcement, because I had a hard time transitioning to civilian life, which a lot of military members attest to that. It's kind of a hard transition for us. You go from being in like a high threat where you're overseas for a long period of time, waiting to basically get shot at or blown up, et cetera. And you train for that constantly. And then all of a sudden you get thrown back to being a civilian. And it's not a way of life. It's not an everyday occurrence where that happens. And so I ended up going into law enforcement after being out of the military for, I think it was two and a half years. That happened during COVID, right? So during COVID, I was recently released from FTO, which is field training officer, somebody who's over me that does basically on-the-job training. I was released on my own, and then COVID hit. And I wasn't allowed to stop cars. I wasn't allowed to look for drugs. I wasn't allowed to do anything other than, like, if it was life-threatening, then we could really go. And once that happened, I realized that I was sitting in my car for basically 12 hours a night because I was on night shift, not doing anything but listening to music. I love all different genres of music. And so it was fun for a little while to just, let's listen to like 6 hours and then 6 hours of rock and then 6 hours of, after a little while, it was like, I'm not learning anything. I just realized I was listening to a lot of music, but I wasn't learning. Well, why don't I try this thing that my dad did years ago? And I'm not entirely convinced that he did right, which was real estate investing. And literally the first podcast that I listened to was Master Passive Income, which is with Dustin Heiner. And he shared how he ended up getting real estate rental properties for passive income, a minimum $250 a property, and ended up getting 30 plus to, I think now it's 50 plus single family homes that make a minimum of $300 a month, and became completely financially independent due to that. So I was like, well, how hard is this? Listen to that. And basically the rest is history after that.
Yeah. So you listen to Dustin's podcast. Dustin's a man, by the way. I sat next to him on a bus in like Scottsdale, Arizona at some conference, and he was there just teaching people, and you guys are connected. And now you work together. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was a pretty wild like journey. So started in his program as a student and all this other stuff. Had him paid for him to be my coach. I really respected how he was as an individual. He's a Christian like myself. He's very straightforward, doesn't really cookie cut, really genuinely wants people to succeed, and wants to help 1 million people invest in real estate, which I was like, man, it's a pretty lofty goal, right? And it's like, well, what's that look like? And so after going through his coaching program, I realized that I really love this. And he actually emailed me and he's like, hey, do you want to coach people through my program that you went through? and help them succeed in real estate investing, whether that's buying their first house or 15th house. And it's like, if you think I have value to bring to your team and people succeed in their real estate, I would absolutely love the opportunity to do so. And yeah, it's been amazing. I've helped amazing people start investing in real estate and just get their start. You never really stop. I'm sure you know, AJ, once you get going, it's like you start in one path and everything just kind of opens up. And then you start seeing like, well, this sounds pretty neat. This sounds pretty neat. And then after that, it just becomes deciding what it is that you want to do in real estate. You're always in it, but you're just trying to decide what's your avenue of approach, so to speak.
100%. Yeah. I started with the house hack. Then we bought like more fourplexes. Then I bought a mobile home park, which you bought a mobile home park too. Tell us about that.
Oh, wow. So that was the most fluke investment I've made to date. And I'd like to buy more of these, but I bought the first one wrong, which we talked a little bit before the call started. And I really admire people who not only share their successes, but also share their bad decisions, so to speak. So when I bought mine, how I ended up with mine is I was working construction, left law enforcement, was working construction, which I have a background in. And it was 30 something degrees on the top of a mountain and the wind was blowing and I smashed my thumb with a hammer, like the atypical classic carpentry fail, right? And I can't feel this thing besides the fact that it's absolutely throbbing like crazy. So I went and sat in my truck, started the truck, turned the heat on. And I was like, I wonder who has something for sale. This is what happens. This is what goes through the mind of a real estate investor. You're just like, I wonder who has something for sale that's not on market. Like nobody else thinks of this stuff, right? And so I just called a real estate agent that I knew and I said, hey, what do you have that's interesting that is not on market? And she said, well, interesting, you should ask. This is where everything started, right? And I realized it started telling me that it was a small mobile home park. It was an 8-pad with a duplex on it. So very small, not big at all. And the guy was wanting to sell it, not wanting to list it, but he was bringing it to agents to say, hey, who do you have that can handle this? So I don't want to go through all the showings, that produce all the income, etc., which was a good thing because he didn't really track much. And lo and behold, I was like, I'm interested. Send me everything you got. So she sent me some stuff, basically bought it with $950 a month income, like gross net. And it cost me $175,000. Now, that is not good for a mobile home park. And AJ, I'm sure you'll agree with me. I was wanting to, when I ran my numbers originally, I ran them like it was a single family home just because I didn't know how to run the numbers. Now, I ignored a couple of things. Obviously, the cash flow is not there. If they want 175, it's bringing in 950. Like that's less than one single home. Why I ignored it was because I saw the potential down the road and some very like quick changes could make a lot of cash flow. Lo and behold, quick changes turned into 2 years of quick changes. So one, don't ignore that don't ignore that 1% rule to boot. And I did that and I don't recommend it. Now, am I glad I bought it? Absolutely. I'm glad I bought it. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of negotiating with contractors and things like that to improve it. But long story short, currently it makes about $3,300 a month passive income gross income. So passively it makes about $1,300. We're actually we're in the process of moving another single wide on the park, and there's room for another one. So each one of those are rent for about $800 a pop. So we're going to be pretty close to $5,000 gross income. And about the time that I finish all of that, it's going to be ready for a refinance, and I'm going to do a cash out refinance on that. And then I'm going to look to borrow more and buy more of them. So
love that. Let's talk about that real quick. I think a lot of people fail to take action because they're scared of doing it wrong. With that?
100%. Failure is a big motivator not to do something. And all of us face that in one. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be Mark Zuckerberg. It doesn't matter. You could be super, super successful, but we're always in some way afraid of failure. But one thing that I've learned is the failure that you face, if you fail or not, it's a good learning experience. And so not to pivot out of the mobile home park, and by all means bring me back. You have more questions with that, but I bought a single family home as a flip last year. And that house I bought for 82.4, and it took a long time. It took almost 12 months to sell. It took a really long time, and that's not how long you want to flip to take. You want it 6 months and less is really, in my opinion, that's the goal equation. Like, it's like, okay, well, everything's paid for. What am I investing for? Well, I don't need to be a millionaire. It doesn't bother me one iota. I think it's a byproduct of investing in real estate the right way. I think that naturally will happen. So why am I investing? And it really comes down to, I'm investing for my family, for my kids. I want to have time with my family and raise my kids the way that I want to raise them. So that's kind of that in a nutshell.
Yeah, I was laughing inwardly because I think all of us have had that. All of us have had the experience where it's like, man, was that worth me spending 5 months in that house renovating it myself? Like, could I have done something a little more productive?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When I started, not to share another crazy tidbit, but I actually quit my job. I was still investing. I was doing coaching with Dustin. I was working a 9 to 5, but I was coaching after hours and things like that. And Dustin asked me to do a podcast, which is how we met, right? And he's like, "Hey, I want you to do this podcast, but I want you to have time. I'm concerned you don't have enough of that to do the podcast." And I had been sitting in my truck working that job, and I was praying. I was like, "Hey, God, I don't have enough time with my family. This is soaking up too much time, which is why I'm investing. Why would I keep investing, et cetera?" And then Dustin was like, "I want you to do this podcast, but I don't think you have enough time." And it was like flicking a switch for me. I walked in once I got back to the office and gave my 2 weeks notice and literally quit without having any idea how I was going to make enough money to pay my own personal bills. Because at this point, I'm not financially free from real estate, et cetera, but it was enough that would have put a serious dent in when I was living, but I didn't want to touch it. Because the moment you touch it, you're taking away from your ability to have more funds for investing. And so I quit my job to do something that I didn't think, and it forced me to be an entrepreneur.
So how long has it been since you did that?
Wow. Let me do the math. I think about 13 to 14 months, about there. So fairly fresh.
Yeah, fairly fresh, but also you're 14 months in.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Pretty amazing, to be honest. I had friends and people telling me for a long time, "Why don't you do your own thing?" And just for the audience, the thing I ended up doing was actually being a handyman. So it's not any glamorous job where I'm making 6 figures, etc. Although that did come, which was crazy. But it's just being a handyman. It's myself. I call it chucking a truck, right? It's just myself and a truck and a trailer full of tools, and I go work. And I decided, and I got some advice. Like, I didn't start out on my own without getting any mentorship and advice, etc. I want to do this right and make as few mistakes as possible. So I went to guys that I know and respect in the small business world, and they helped me with my sales. They helped me with, like, here's how you start a business. Here's my accountant. Here's all this stuff. And I started a small meetup once a month where I invited other guys who have small businesses. Like, my brother's he's very well off, sort of, I guess. He took our family business, which was house painting, and took it to multiple 7 figures, and which isn't crazy for a house painting company in my area. And so he has a lot of things figured out. I was just like, I don't want to recreate the wheel. So how do I do this? And so I started this meetup where I invited other guys, and we just sit around and we talk shop about business. How do we do sales? How do we do cost of goods? How do we hire? How do we fire? How do we do all this stuff? And it's been really awesome. And it's just word of mouth, and I don't like making a lot of mistakes. I'm more than willing to make my own fair share, and that will happen naturally. So yeah, it's been a pretty crazy experience.
So I know, like, people go into real estate looking for financial independence. Maybe they find it through a couple rentals or, some larger properties, mobile home park. But I know a lot of folks, including myself, continue to look for like active income opportunities to continue to scale the income. We're doing like 12 flips right now. I'm working with the Best Ever show on their kind of commission side. Just curious how you look at passive income versus active income. How do you balance those two?
That's an interesting question because I don't know if I've ever thought about it in a very technical sense, but so I decided it was all about how I spend my time, basically is what it comes down to. So I have the coaching I do for Master Passive Income and then my own investing, etc. But I realized, okay, well, where's the majority of my time going? The majority of my time during the actual working week goes towards my handyman company, right? Well, how much money do I need to make per day to be able to work as little as possible? So once I figured out, okay, well, let's just use an arbitrary number, like $1,000 a day. Like that's what I need to make net. So $1,000 a day. Well, how many days a week do I need to work that? Right? Well, if that's net, so it needs to be a little bit above that, et cetera, not including supplies. So how many days do I need to actually work this every single week for the entire month to be able to like have the time I want to have? So I decided 3. I decided 3 days a week. That's 12 days a month. And that's what I decided I need to work. And my goal is $750 to $1,000 a day net. That's what I'm looking for, because that allows not only my bills to be paid, it allows excess money to be going towards actual investing, and it pays for the new truck that I needed to buy because I was driving an old beater truck, right? So once I decided that, it was 3 days of actual work, 1 day of doing estimates, and then I generally take Mondays off. And that's after 1 year of being in business. It took me about 6 months to figure that out. And then once I did that, my time started becoming free, which is also how I ended up doing that flip house last year, is because I had more time than I would have normally had. So as far as like the ratio, so to speak, it really, I would say that depends on your goals. Like, what are your goals? Do you want to invest in multifamily, single family, et cetera? Like single family is, I'm not trying to downplay it, but it is fairly cut and dry once you figure out the method. Once you get into multifamily, it gets a little more complicated, and I would put mobile home parks in the same arena as multifamily with a few differences that are a few nuances that really take some experience or to figure out, just like knowing the right questions to ask. But it's not really something I've thought a lot about as far as to like, how do I balance the two? But that's generally what I shoot for.
So what do you shoot for from an investing perspective now? Do you look for more mobile home parks? Are you looking for multifamily, single family? What does that look like for you?
So I'm open to all avenues. So I don't really shut one off. If the deal makes sense and it's a really good deal, I'm all about it. But for 2025, I'm really shooting for smaller mobile home parks with the goal of in about 2.5 years, really looking at something from the $5 to $10 million range. So it's like, I don't want people to shoot too small. If you say, well, I want to buy one house next year, there's nothing wrong with that goal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you say you want to buy a 150 unit apartment complex next year, there's nothing wrong with that goal either. It's just figuring out what's the steps you got to do in order to do that. Who do you need to surround yourself with? How do you raise the capital, et cetera? So for me, 2025, I want to focus on smaller mobile home parks, probably 25 units and less. Next year, it will probably be a little bit higher. And then the year after that, it'll be probably 100 units and more.
I love that. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that more, because the mobile home parks we've invested in so far, they've been about 50 units and 75 units. And I've encountered other folks that are doing smaller mobile home parks, but I've never understood, like, how do you add value to those, make them work on a smaller scale versus like on the larger scale? So are you mostly self-managing? How do you approach like the analysis? What does that all look like?
Right. So no to self-managing. I don't want to do that. So the whole thing, like at Master Passive Income, I'm literally taking what we teach for single family home and just turning this into a multifamily unit type of business. So we're all about building the business first, right? So if I find an area or I have an area, it's like, okay, well, here's a mobile home park. What do I think about like Texas, right? Or what do I think about West Virginia? Or what do I think about North Carolina? It doesn't really matter. You pick any area and say, okay, well, here's one. Now, you got to remember that these things usually stick on market a little bit longer than single family homes. So you have a little bit of time. I would say 30 to 90 days is fairly common. And some of them stick even longer because people nowadays are really listing them something. They're astronomical.
Something fierce. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you're laughing. So I know you've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
But, so I'm looking at one right now that's in West Virginia, and it's a 14 unit and they want $500K. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding. And I would say for that kind of stuff, it's about knowing how to value the park. But as far as like getting back to like, what do I look for? So the things that I look for in those is who owns the units, the actual mobile homes themselves, not the lots. If you're buying a park, you own the dirt, right? So you want to know who owns the lots. Is it town water and sewer, or is it septics and wells? Does it have a lagoon? Has a environmental study been done? What ages are the approximate ages of the trailers? I really could care less the majority of the time, but I want to know the approximate ages because that just tells me like, okay, well, there's going to be some expenses in rehab if it hasn't already happened. How do they manage is a huge one. If they have somebody that's already managing the park and they're doing a bang up job, like they're doing great, why switch management? Of course, I would interview the manager and say, okay, well, how do you this property management company, et cetera. But I look at all of that when it comes down to like purchasing something like that. Now, if it's don't have that and they're self-managing, that really comes down to, okay, well, pick the area that it's in. If you don't want to manage like myself, like I want to do that. That sounds terrible. That's not why I invest. I don't invest to handle other people's like rent payments and toilets and tenants and all that jazz, right? I don't want to manage any of that. So I look, it's like, well, if that's not being done, then I'm going to reach out to a property management company and say, would you manage this? And if they say, absolutely not, that's the worst part of town I've ever seen in my life. And I said, okay, is this property even worth me looking at? Is it worth me making an offer if it's in one of the worst places of town? Now, you do have to realize your clientele is usually lower income clientele, and that's totally fine. They need a place to live as well. But it's all about how you want to be perceived as the investor, as the owner. Like the amount of times I bought that, and in year one, people are like, oh, you're a slumlord now. And it's like, no, man, don't do that to me. So it's about how you want to be perceived, and like, are you going to spend money for upkeep of the park, or are you going to just buy it and let it basically crash and burn and just make money for you, but not be a great mobile home park? I decided I didn't want to do that. I'll spend money on the park and on the single wise. So those are just a couple of things that I would look at as far as like smaller parks. And then what's your value add? Same thing as single family homes. Like, can you run a burr on it? I literally ran a burr on my mobile home park. I used private money to buy it. And then I had refinanced, I think in 8 months, and it was great. It's at a 5.25 right now, and it's due for refinance, and like it's in a 5-year arm. So it's due for a rate adjustment 2 years, I think, maybe a little less. And yeah, it's been a great buy. I learned a lot in that process.
And that's awesome. So let's get tactical. A couple questions I want to ask. It sounds like you own all these yourself, correct?
No, actually, I do not. Ironically, okay. Yeah. So the two of them, one was abandoned, and one had a druggie in it. And being a former law enforcement officer, it was to my advantage. This is 20 minutes from my home, so it's not like it's very far for me to drive to. I found a property management company that would manage it. Basically, she ended up leaving due to the fact that she didn't want to deal with me, which was great. So I ended up going through the whole Department of Motor Vehicles process. They're getting a new title for the one that was abandoned. The one that had her in it cost me $135 in taxes. And I did a owner finance for that thing without doing any repairs at all, just because I was like, the timing was not good for me having money to do the repairs. If I owned it outright now, I would 100% spend the money to rehab it. But I'm not going to waste time looking in the past, right? So ended up basically investing $135 to get this thing, and it makes me $540 a month. So it was great. Found somebody that did 0 repairs. They wanted to live in it. They were like, we'll do the repairs ourselves. I was like, great. In 7 years, you're going to own it. Here's the interest rate. I think it was an $18,000 purchase price, 12%, 0 down. And if they don't follow X criteria, then it's mine. Like if they are late over an elongated period of time, then it's mine. But one of the things I did with them is I actually met with them and said, hey, I want you to line out all your finances. I want all of your income and all of your outgo, because I want to make sure that I'm not taking every dime that you earn every single month. So that way I have anything left at the end of the month. I was like, I do not want that. I want you to succeed in life, and I don't want to take all your money, but this is worth something. And that's what I did for both of them. And the other one, I invested, I think, $16,000 in the rehab, and it makes $758 a month, if I recall. So yeah, it will pay itself. That investment will pay itself off in right at about 2 years. So about another year or so, it will pay itself off. And then the other ones are privately owned. Now, I raised lot rents over time. And when I got it, it was, I want to say it was $105 a month lot rent. And all of the tenants pay their own utilities. So I wasn't saddled with any of that. And there's an old duplex there as well. And one side of the duplex need to be completely remodeled, which I spent 17 grand on that, and like $8,000, $8,000 or $9,000 on a roof. But there was an abandoned Jeep next to the abandoned single wide. And so I was able to go through the DMV process to get that. And lo and behold, it was worth about 8 grand. So I basically cleaned it, sold it, and it paid for the roof on the duplex that won't need to be repaired, et cetera, for another 20 to 30 years. So that was beneficial. Not everything's going to work out like that, but it was pretty great. And it was a good process for me to go through. I know a lot more about how to do that. And so, yeah, I only own 2, and then the duplex, and then I just moved one on. So technically, I guess that's 3 currently I own on the park.
So it's use what you have to get what you want.
Absolutely.
You use the 2 parks, the 2 homes that were in there. Sounds like you still own them, park-owned homes, but you sold them on seller finance. So you have some folks that are paying you monthly in exchange for eventually owning it, paying you off in the future and owning it. And then you took this like Jeep and sold it for cash, and now you can use that for cash for your own investments. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It was wild. I didn't have any major plans going into this investment. So there was a lot of like, man, what do I do with this thing? I bought it without a lot of forethought. And I remember going to Dustin, and because he was my coach at the time, and he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, I've never bought one of those. He's like, I'll help you as much as I possibly can, but I have no clue. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And I realize now as a coach myself, I'm like, that's the moments that really make you sweat. Like, oh no.
100%. Yeah. Okay. So you've got these deals. Tell me a little bit more. I want to get a little more tactical. How do you evaluate markets? Like, do you just buy in a singular market? Are you looking in multiple? And if you are looking in multiple, how do you choose, like, I want this market instead of this market?
So I haven't gotten super tactical or technical with that yet, but I will say, like, where I'm investing currently is a market I'm very familiar with as far as like mobile home parks go. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, guys that own mobile home parks, and I'm really interested in how they run their numbers, et cetera. But this one actually makes me laugh, but I found it to be fairly true, is like, how close are you to a Walmart? It's not really a major metric, but it's like, it was something that somebody said, and I was like, wait a minute. And they said, if you're within 30 minutes of a Walmart, you're basically fine for a mobile home park. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I looked at all the ones in my area, and sure enough, the ones that I am all familiar with that have been around for a long time are all within 20 to 30 minutes of a Walmart. I couldn't believe that when I realized that. I thought that was pretty wild. It is not the only market I'm interested in. Markets that are booming are great. Mobile home parks are not being created. There's not there's a lot of stigma associated with them. So a lot of places are like, no, we don't really want them in our area, etc. But you have to have lower income housing, right? And you can get Section 8 housing, you can get government subsidies for that housing, right? So how do you decide? Well, for me, I use the Walmart one because I thought it was funny, and it actually seems to be fairly true. But is there an area that actually supports like some kind of growth? I don't know that I want to be in a market that's completely stagnant, right? Like if you said like, okay, well, Columbus, Ohio, for instance. Now, I don't know a lick about Columbus, but I know that it's growing, right? Well, okay, I wouldn't mind owning something in Columbus, Ohio for the pure fact that I know that it's growing. I'm not a super analytical person when it comes to investing, but I would look at, okay, well, what's the growth for the past 5 years? What new businesses are being brought in? Where's the Walmart, right? And so I would look at that kind of stuff. And then I would say, okay, well, let me go to Facebook Marketplace for this area. That's a wealth of information as far as like investing, because you see what's for sale. People will sell single wides inside the park itself or all around it. And you'll find mobile home parks for sale on Facebook Marketplace, which is pretty crazy. A lot of them are owner sellers. And so you could get some potential deals there. But I'm definitely not ruling out any other markets like Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. And these are markets I'm a little more familiar with. Like, I'm not going to go buy one in California. I'll tell you that right now. I'm just not even interested. But anyway, so I don't get super technical with that. It's just, will the market bear it? Is there a property manager that manages in this particular area that aligns with what I'm looking for as an investment? And is it a good deal?
I'm going to add that to my pitch decks. Where is the Walmart?
Yeah. People laugh all the time, but I can't remember where I heard that. But I think I was driving my truck and I almost stopped my truck because I was like, no way. And sure enough, it seemed to be true on all the ones that I was interested in. They were hit within 20, 30 minutes of Walmart's.
It's so true. And when you think about it, like, it's so smart what you're doing. Because when you think about it, Walmart pays a lot of money in order to figure out where to put their stores.
Same with Starbucks.
So does Starbucks, so does Chick-fil-A, so does Aldi. Like, all these different corporations pay a lot of money to figure out where to put their stores. So you can just kind of leech off of that and like figure out, hey, this is a good market. I don't have to spend $100,000 or whatever it is to figure out it's good. I can just follow them. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, there's certain things that you stumble across when you start investing. You're like, oh wow, that's brilliant, and then you just add it to your toolbox and you pull it out when you need to pull it out, put it back in there, and share it with other investors so they can be successful as well.
Another one I think folks can take away from your story is the seller finance, like selling stuff on seller finance. Maybe it's to someone who currently they don't have the credit in order to buy something or get a loan for something. But I think you mentioned like you're charging like 12% interest in order for them to rent it from you, rent to own. That works because it's like they're willing to pay it because they don't have another alternative to get into the ownership route. Right. And this allows them to also get in for no money down. So it's kind of a win-win. You get a higher rent or rent premium, and then they get access to ownership.
Yeah, you're giving them like a pride of ownership. Also, a lot of people that may be faced with these same circumstances, etc. They've never really owned much of any of their own stuff. It's like, I'm not a very materialistic person, but it's like, I want to own my own home, right? And there's something that comes with pride of ownership. And so I'm trying to provide that for people who want it when the occasion provides, right? So there's tons of people that don't have that and never experienced that and have lived a paycheck life, etc. Well, within 7 years, they're going to own this thing outright, and their rent's going to go from like I think I said it was like $754, $758, something like that. It's going to go down to whatever the lot rent is. And that's it. They'll pay their annual taxes, which I happen to know is only $100 a year. It's a joke. So within 7 years, they're going to own this thing. Then if they renege on it, for whatever reason, I get it back and I can do it again, or I can finish fixing it up and hold on to it. So.
Right. And they have an asset on their balance sheet. Like you said, there's pride of ownership. I think there's some really cool stuff with mobile home parks where, for example, in an apartment, you can't rent to own an apartment unless you're maybe in like Chicago and people are actually selling apartments or condos, but that's typically not the case. And with mobile home parks, you also have a little bit of acreage. Like you're going to have some space
Right.
typically around your mobile home park. That's a yard you can care for,
Mhm.
put some stuff in, clean
Yeah.
it up and have whatever you want in there. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I would say as an owner, like I have in my contracts where people sign if they're paying lot rent or if they're doing a rent to own for the mobile home itself, it just has basic regulations like it cannot look like a pigsty, right? If I drive by and it doesn't look good, I'm calling my property manager and you're going to have to clean it out, which I mean happens. I go and I look at mine probably, I don't know, once every 4 months, something like that. It's nothing extreme. And it's funny because when I bought it, I went in and introduced myself to the chief of police of the local town. Like, I mean, it doesn't even have a stoplight, this town. It has like a bypass going through it, like a 460, which is the not an interstate necessarily, but it doesn't even have a red light. And you could probably cross that riding on a horse and nobody even blink. And that's kind of the area that I grew up in, not this one, but one county over. But I went in and introduced myself to the chief of police, and I said, "Hey, I just bought this thing. If there's any problems, please call me. Here's my card, etc." And we had a really great conversation. And I think he's called me one time, and he's like, "Hey, can I put my re-election, or can the sheriff put his re-election sign at the corner of your property?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that's fine." And then one time he called me, maybe twice. One time he called me and said, "Hey, your grass is getting long. The town's going to start fining you if you don't cut it." And he's like, "I'm just calling as a courtesy." And I was like, "Hey, chief, I appreciate it. I'll get on that." And that was shortly after I had bought it. And then we found somebody to cut the entire mobile home park itself. So that way that doesn't happen. So,
Nice. Yeah, that's a hack too, either in apartment complexes or mobile home parks, like working with the police, especially when it's maybe an area that's maybe D plus class or C minus class. Working with the police to have someone stationed there or keep an eye on your property is a great way to keep tabs and control over what is the quality of the experience there.
absolutely.
Really cool.
Well, the funny thing about that one is I can stand on the corner of my mobile home park and I throw a rock and actually hit his car where his police station is. Don't recommend that. I have not actually done that, for the record. And so he walks out his door and he sees it. He can't help it.
Yeah.
I just saw it as like completely advantageous. And I stop in there every time I go and say, "Hey, is there anything I need to change? Is there like something I need to know? Is there some development going on with the town council, etc.?" And they just fill me in because I try to help them out as much as I can, make their job as law enforcement as easy as possible. And being a former law enforcement officer myself certainly helps in that arena.
So speaking of helping people out, you got Master Passive Income. You're a coach.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you coach the folks that you coach, what some of the results have been. Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
So, well, the like Dustin's built an incredible like how to basically. So Master Passive Income takes you through how do you build your business first? How do you go out and you actually build a real estate business that can produce money on its own when you sleep? Well, what's the biggest problems that come with owning real estate? Tenants and toilets, right? And then the management side. Well, Dustin didn't want to do that, and neither do I. I don't have the time. I've got 3 kids, and it's like I do not want to spend my time solving this problem. And so we teach people how to buy real estate, single family homes outside their area where they live most of the time. Like my first house I bought was in Ohio, and I live in southwestern Virginia. To that point, I had never been to Ohio in my life, and I've never actually seen the house. The only reason I know that I own it, besides I get a check, is the fact that it was white on Google Maps, and now it's like a light blue on Google Maps because I paid to have it. So that's actually been one of the best rentals, and it was my first one. It's like nearly $500 a month in passive income, which is pretty crazy. And so we teach people how to build the business first, how to create the LLC, how to find areas of the country to invest, how to interview property managers, how to look for mortgage brokers, real estate agents, things like that, to just build their contact list, so to speak. Kind of date myself when I say build that Rolodex of names, right? And so that's what we do. And it's just teaching people how to do all of that. And I really, really love that. Like I've had one guy, Gary, if you're listening to this, you're the man. But he's an older gentleman. He came to Rubicon, which is Dustin's annual real estate conference. It's awesome. By the way, the next one is April 10 through 12, I believe. I'll definitely be there. It's in St. Louis, Missouri. Come check us out. But he started purely, he didn't need to invest in real estate personally. Besides the fact that his daughter was a nurse and had a little kid, and she had to go back to work, and she really didn't want to. She wanted to be a mom, like all the time, 100%, not have to go back to being a nurse. So he realized, well, I am financially set. How do I use my position to buy real estate for me, for her, for our family, etc.? And I mean, he took that ball and he absolutely ran with that sucker. I think his first house was a duplex, and he was one of those guys that once he figured something out, I was like, man, I'm going to sit back in the passenger seat and watch this thing happen. And I think he started with a duplex, and then he went straight to like a 15, 20 unit apartment complex. Like he didn't hold anything back. So he had some finances available, which is usually one of the harder parts when starting to invest, is have your finances. How do you get the money for it? But he started with that, and I need to actually email and ask him where he's at now, because we do 6 months worth of coaching, and he absolutely hit the ground running and blew what I did in 6 months out of the water. And so his success story is pretty wild to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gotten a 100-unit apartment complex by now, just based on like his progression. So I don't typically teach the multifamily side, but we have another guy that is better at multifamily. So we ended up actually moving him from the single family side to another guy that teaches multifamily inside of the master passive income, just because it was like, look, I can try to teach you this, or I can actually send you to somebody who can teach you this. Like, this is a little bit outside of what I'm super familiar with. So I want to move you over here so that way you can get as much help as possible to succeed. So Dustin's really building that with guys who know certain aspects of real estate. Like I've owned an Airbnb, I've done midterm with the same property. And I've learned that it's a very interesting aspect. It's not necessarily my wheelhouse, so to speak. Single family home is pretty cut and dry once you figure it out. And that's kind of like my bread and butter still.
Nice. Well, William, it's been about an hour. I appreciate you hopping on with me and sharing your experience. I'll leave it with you. What do you want to share with the guests, with the folks that are listening today? I know you got Rubicon coming up. Is there any other way they should find you or learn more about masterpassiveincome.com?
If you want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, William Parmer on LinkedIn and Instagram. Please do LinkedIn. I am terrible about social media, but I actually check my LinkedIn. But as far as like, I want to leave your guests with kind of a nugget. And it's like, if you are curious about this, if you just like, I've always wanted to start, I don't know where to start. Well, my suggestion is listen to podcasts, listen to AJ's podcast, listen to podcasts in real estate that you're very interested in. Like, surround yourself with other people that are already doing it or want to do it. It's like, okay, once you do all of that, you're going to naturally absorb information. You may not know what it means now. Like, I didn't know what ROI was until I really started. And I was probably 6 months in before I was like, oh, that's return on investment. Okay, well, how do you quantify that? How do you calculate it? And then that stuff will come. So don't be concerned about trying to figure everything out now and know every term before you get started. Get started now. Start changing your mindset about real estate. Get around the right people that are already doing it. Start learning from them, and you're going to end up basically needing to start. Like, it's going to be an itch that you cannot scratch.
And William, you mentioned podcasts. I know you and Charles have a podcast. Plug that one.
So that one's on Spotify and Apple. It's called Breakthrough Investor, and we interview really phenomenal, amazing investors, not just in the real estate world, but also in stocks and things of that nature, which is like outside of my realm of understanding necessarily. So, and you've been on that as well, AJ, and like, we really love to interview great guests and hear their stories. And so, yeah, if you want to give us a listen, it's Breakthrough Investor on Spotify or Apple. And yeah, we try to come out with a new podcast every week and just make it entertaining and educational for our guests, and try to promote real estate investing and encourage everybody to start.
Entertaining, educational, informational. I think you guys have a lot of tactical advice. I know you guys have a lot of tactical advice that you provide at masterpassiveincome.com. So give that a view. Check out the Breakthrough Investor podcast. And without further ado, William, thanks for being on the show. We'll talk soon.
It's a pleasure to be here, AJ.
Awesome.